working on the rose, and we're going to start out by putting our background in first. In this kit, the colors that we are using are the red for the rose, a yellow, green, and a green, and then the white background with a little bit of sparkly glitter, and you will have all of that in your kit. So let's start today with our stipple brush, and we talked about using that, and this one is not melted and it's still got wax in it, so we're going to show how to kind of unmelt it. I'm going to stick it into my melting pot, kind of up on that second layer, and I'm going to work it a little bit. You also can just kind of stick it directly into the wax if you want to just pick up more wax and not worry about getting any of this out, but you'll notice it start to be more pliable the more you warm it. So I just kind of wanted to show you how to get that kind of warmed up. Now I'm not going to worry about it getting it too pliable. If I was doing something different, I might get it a little bit more pliable, but I'm just going to take it directly over to my gourd piece and lay my background for my rose. So I'm just going to come in, and you don't want to go over that. See how we just laid that on with one nice smooth background. If you go over it, you're going to pick that wax up and you're going to make it cold, and it's not going to be smooth. So we just want to smooth that all out nice and neat, have that nice background. So that is ready to go, and we're going to warm it up and make it all even first. So we're going to come over to our heat gun and circle the outside edges first because they take longer to heat up than the middle. And you want that nice and smooth, and once that's nice and smooth, stop. You don't want to overdo that. I'm not going to pick that up yet because we're still warm. See, some of this is a little bit thinner in areas and it's not going to go anymore. And if you think it needs another coat, you can go wait till it completely dries and you can put another coat back onto it. But I'm going to do so much on this, I'm not going to worry about this. Now, you have to let this cool before you do the next step. And it has to cool right away, quite a bit. You're going to be surprised on how much it takes. So we're going to set that aside for a minute, and we're going to set up our rose. And I'm going to use a melting pot, and I'm going to have the wax emptied out of it, and we're going to use the texture brush and insert. So we're throwing the insert into the melting pot, and the texture brush that we're going to use today, your rose is going to be this big. Now that's a little bit big, not too much, so just take your scissors and trim it down. Just take them and cut them on the sides till you get the size you want. And it can be oblong, that's fine. Or we can trim it a little bit more, that's okay too. Whatever you want. Now the widest part is going to be, if it's oblong, is going to be here. And see, we're just going to put that right on and spin it. So once this warms up, we're going to come in and we're going to take our red, and we're just going to go across the top of this till we have a nice even coat. And we're going to put our texture brush in and pick up that wax, and I'm going to lift that up and come over to my piece, and I want to put it right in the middle and turn it. Now I need more than that. There we go. I think that's enough. Just right like that. Okay. Now I'm going to add, with my stipple brushes again, some green. And I'm barely getting into this, the green wax and pulling it out onto that second level, and just using a little bit of that, just kind of tapping it off, kind of like you would stencil. And we're just going to put some green in there. Now I'm going to cheat And I'm going to put my second color of just green up here in the corner. I just need a tad, and I just laid that right down in there, and I'm going to use my brush and just pick that part up here. That way I don't have to get a second melting pot, and I just want some variation in my green. Now, I don't want this solid. You want to kind of leave some in between. And this technique, you're not going to heat it very much at all. It's just a real light heat. So we're going to go over to our heat gun. And I'm going to stop and open my glitter up and have it ready for me to get into. Now this one's a different one, so I might pour a little bit of it somewhere so I can grab it without and be able to get into it, because I put it on with my fingers. If you try and put it on with this, there is too much. So I'm going to just put it in a little pile that I can reach up and grab after I get this right where I want it. Alright, we're going to try to melt this. I'm going to try to hold this at a little bit of an angle so you can see, but you don't want to have it at an angle because your wax will run. And you don't want to overdo this at all. If you don't like the way the rose is, redo it. And I'm just adding some glitter, just a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. One little pinchful right to the top. And there you have the rose. And the more you want to melt it, the bigger it's going to get. And I don't, like I said, I barely just suggest melting that at all. This guy isn't quite smooth, so I'm going to try and come in here and just smooth him up just a tad. I guess he's a glitter up there. But don't over melt it. If you over melt it, take it off, melt it real good, take it off, and do it again. Okay, our rose is done. And we are now going to let this cool. And then we're going to put our Mod Podge Dimensional Magic on it. And this is water-based, and because this is wax and we're using this as jewelry, we've got to make sure that we've got this coated very, very, very well. Now, you don't want to put it on while it is warm or hot. You want to make sure that it's cooled down enough. We're going to put our Dimensional Magic right on it. And if your gourd was flat enough, I have not been able to keep it on by putting it on the outside and then trying to bring it in. If you can make that work and it's flat enough, go right ahead. Otherwise, I do about 5 coats. And I should have removed my wax off the sides first before we did this. And this is water-based, so we can clean it with our water. So I'm going to kind of hold this where I'm not in the middle and make sure that you remove this first. Because later on when you're doing that, if you have any of the varnish over the top of it, it doesn't want to come off. So that is our first step. So you get to see I'm not always perfect either. Isn't that pretty though? And it's so simple to do. It's just amazing. And then go ahead and put the Dimensional Magic over it. Like I said, I'd like to do 5 coats. Make sure they're nice and dry in between each coat. You want to make sure they're real secure. And then also on the last one before we put the necklace part on it, make sure you've given it at least 3 hours to completely dry. Depending on your humidity too, you may need just a little bit longer. And always test them, make sure if they're going to be worn out in the sun, make sure that they're fine before you sell them or give them to anybody, stuff like that. You just want to make sure that they're nice and secure. All right, let's get that dried and we'll come back and do the necklace. I'm going to show you the proper way to put the finish on this. I noticed just real quick when we were going back, the way I was showing you was leaving the brush strokes, and we don't want that, and we want to just go into a little bit more detail, the proper way to apply our Dimensional Magic. Dimensional Magic is made to be put on thick, so we want to put it on thicker than just a little bit of brushing on, and it's better to have too much than too little. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to start it on the outside. I'm going to put a layer, and then I'm going to put quite a bit in the middle. And actually, from what I found out, it is better to have too much than not enough. And then I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to go along the outside edge, and I'm just going to lightly spread it out on top. And if it comes over the sides, just wipe that off. It's not a big deal. But what you'll notice is when I went to wipe, these ridges right here are going to disappear because it is thick enough for them to blend back together. And if it's not thick enough, you need to apply more of the Dimensional Magic, and that way it keeps us from getting the brush strokes. Now see, when I put them on more, you don't want to do that. You want to get it on and leave it. You don't want to overwork it. So less is actually better when it comes to putting or using the brush on it. Just wipe a couple times to get that all kind of spread out nice and even, and then you'll notice it start to kind of gel down, and that is how that you want to apply the Dimensional Magic. Just keep your sides clean, set that straight down, and let that continue to dry.